1.
Izquierda.
Pasando. Gracias. Welcome to this video. Today I'm taking you along on a mass start, on a group start race that we raced here in Spain. So as you may have guessed, this is the start and we're going full throttle, trying to overtake as many riders as possible, because later on there's going to be lots of technical trails and it's super hard to overtake riders on trails. So this is us fighting and giving everything at the start of the race. And I seriously thought my e-bike was broken here, because I was riding full throttle, giving everything I could. And if you look at the front, you may see that some of the riders, they don't seem like they're struggling. They seem like they're just pedaling. So we're going to talk about this later on. This is the first gravel climb coming up now. And well, again, same thing. We're riding at 25 kilometers per hour. I am literally dying here. And if you look at the riders in the front, well, they don't look like they're struggling too much. But again, I'm going to come to that later. Okay, so this is, again, me dying on the first climb. So one tip I definitely need to tell you, we're starting to overtake the non-e-bikers, because let me explain a little more about the style of this race. It's a total of 500 racers of all levels. So there's some international pros, but also a lot of hobby racers. And the non-e-bikers, they start 15 minutes before the e-bikers. We raced in the e-bike category. So these are the non-e-bikers we're starting to overtake now. This is about 20 minutes into the race. So we're trying to overtake as many racers as possible, because we know there's a trail coming up soon, and on that trail it's going to be impossible to overtake riders. And my strength, and Bernie and my strength, is definitely skills, and that's why we competed in the e-mountain bike category, because we know that endurance is not our strength. So this is the last climb up to the first trail, and this is Bernie's camera. Bernie's my husband, and he is now approaching the first trail, which I always call bonsais. Okay, so he's looking back and noticing that I'm not there. So this is what he's sharing with you in German with subtitles.
So, Roxy ist jetzt hinter dem Biker gefangen, kann nicht überholen hier. Ja, das ist hier beim so einem Massenstart immer das Problem. Das heißt, ich muss jetzt warten, bis sie von hinten ankommt. Aber natürlich ist es ein bisschen gemischt hier, Cross-Country-Bikes und aber auch E-Bikes, meistens Enduros. Das heißt, die vom Federweg und der Kraft deutlich überlegen sind. Das heißt, jetzt muss ich einfach schauen, ob der so lieb ist und Roxy vorbeilässt. Aber kommen ja noch mehr schöne Abfahrten, die wir gemeinsam machen können. Liegt schon Flasche am Trail. Und hier lassen es die Leute natürlich ordentlich runter. Ordentlich ausgebremst schon. Hier stufig rinnen. Aber seht ihr selber. Das heißt, wenn man hier andrücken will, ist es gefährlich, wenn Leute vor einem sind. Staubt etwas. Das heißt, danach mal Linse putzen, damit ihr auch was sehen könnt. Bisschen Safety Distance. Das heißt, der vorne einen Fahrfehler macht, dass ich ihm nicht drauf knall. Wieder Flasche. Das heißt, das Gelände hier hat zu viele Löcher. Da haut es die Flaschen raus. So, putze mir die Linse und lasse die mir ein bisschen vor. Aber geil lässt. Jetzt kommt Roxy.
So here I finally managed to catch up to Bernie because I was able to pass the guy. And then we come into, well, I call it a traffic jam because there's a very, very technical, super steep, super gnarly section coming up. And while most riders participating, to be honest, they could use some skills training. So I'm giving you some tips today later on how you can avoid causing this traffic jam. So now you'll see me overtake on the left side because there is a techier, but actually, in my opinion, better line. I like it more because it's very steep, very techy, but very grippy actually. So you see me overtaking on the left side. Now we're still stuck in this, I still call it a traffic jam. So it was very exciting to still try to overtake but not manage, but you can still see that skills, they do pay off because we are riding more efficient and also safer than most of the other riders. And that's something that I definitely would recommend, that if you ride technical races, then practice skills often enough, because it was so amazing for me to know that I really have the skills, that I can trust them, that I don't have to think about any of this, and that I can just concentrate on, well, the stuff that does challenge me, which was actually the uphills. So Bernie was just telling me, hey, don't concentrate on overtaking here, just relax, try to save energy, because we're going to need it later on. And that's exactly what I did. So I tried to extend my legs as often as possible and to just roll through it in very energy saving mode, and to also actually enjoy the view, because isn't it amazing? This section coming up is a super interesting one because it was the techiest, steepest, loosest and gnarliest section, and you can see many riders walking, many riders dismounting and somehow surviving, and me overtaking 6 riders. So now I'm in the section that you just saw on helmet camera, and maybe you noticed that the helmet camera totally flattens it out because it's super steep, it's extremely loose, and there are pretty big roll downs as well. So it's a combination of many things, and also super big rocks just sticking out coming towards you. And one tip I really want to give you is, when you're riding this by yourself, you're probably always going to just take one line, and that's like your favorite line because it's, you like it and you've ridden it a few times, so you make a habit of using that line. That's totally okay. But if you want to start racing, especially with other people on the track, I mean, we entered this section with at least 8 riders with us, then you need to be able to ride any line that is open. And in the race, I didn't ride the line that I would probably have picked, but I was able to ride it because I practiced before. I practiced hitting different lines. I practiced changing my line. If for some, out of some reason I couldn't hit the line I wanted, I practiced deliberately picking a new line. And also I practiced all different obstacles that then come together here. And because I had that confidence in my skills, I could just concentrate on the other riders and pick the line that I had to pick and stay on that line safely. To be honest, I really enjoyed overtaking riders, and I really enjoyed these techie sections because I knew they're my strengths. And this next section coming up here is a super, super techie uphill. Watch Bernie literally pass, I think, 5 riders. And I'm so proud to say that I also made it up.
So this is the short and steep climb you saw already in the video, where I overtook some riders, and I did something different than these riders. First of all, I switched the gear prior to this climb, so I was already in a good gear to climb this section. And second thing I did different was I used a standing climbing technique. So I wasn't sitting on myself I was standing, and this helped me to absorb the impacts. As you can see here, the terrain is pretty uneven, and I had a perfect traction on my front wheel and my rear wheel because I had the ability to move my body slightly forward, front and backwards to have the perfect setup.
Bernie was being a super gentleman here, and he kept waiting for me and kept letting me pass so that we have really nice camera shots for you guys. And I was just telling him, I'm so dead, I can't. And he was like, no, you can do it. And so this section here is very, very loose, but it's not super steep, so it's a very speedy section where it's really important to have traction control through your body and the tires because it's very loose in the corners. And it's actually something that I enjoy riding a lot. So I was trying to pass the riders here, but they just wouldn't let me pass. And then now the next trail coming is called Ruedas Gordas. I actually tried to overtake riders when I entered because I was like, oh no, I don't want to get stuck behind them. And I was very grateful that some of them actually allowed me to overtake. And the one rider I followed, he was having so much fun, and it was so great to ride behind him because he really enjoyed the trail. And I love riding behind trainers. I love riding behind riders who enjoy, because it's great following their lines, and it's always an inspiration for me.
I would love to know, have you ever ridden a mass start race? Well, share with me in the comments. What were your challenges and how did you manage to stay with yourself and not go way over and beyond your limit when everyone was cheering for you from the outside? I would really love to know. Just comment below.
Generally, the trails here are very loose and super steppy, so there's a lot of steps that you can roll, and I would recommend rolling them if it's very loose, because right after the steps there's usually a pretty tight corner and it's very loose. So if you drop them, then sometimes this causes a loss of control, or you just ride straight ahead when there's a corner coming up. And that's why it's super important to also be able to roll large roll downs safely at different speeds. So that's also something that you need to practice if you really want to get into racing, especially techie racing. So this guy in front of me, he's having a great fun, and I really enjoyed this section because it was a cross-country rider really having a great time and going woo 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 all the time, and I was just behind him having so much fun and just following his lines and, well, you know, just partying on the trail. So the skyline you can see on the right there, that's Benidorm, also called Beni York because of all the high buildings. And Bernie's letting me pass again. We're entering a super technical trail now, which is actually very steep. And again, steepness doesn't show. And well, unfortunately, we're stuck behind a few riders, so we need to take out a lot of speed here, but still, it's fun. That's also a tip I'd like to give to you. Get used to not riding at the speed you like riding at, because like here, when you're stuck behind riders, well, you need to ride much slower than you probably intended to ride. So being able to ride technical, steep, loose trails at different speeds is definitely a prerequisite to, well, doing well in technical races like here. So again, now it's uphill. These are non-e-bike racers, so we can overtake them on our e-bikes. The next trail is actually also one of my favorite trails because it's a little flowier than the others, and there's a drop, which you just saw me take, and then there's some, well, slightly bermed corners. Not really, they're also very loose, but they kind of have a mini berm. And also, as you can see, the views are absolutely stunning, which is why I love living here at the Costa Blanca. The trails are super technical, super loose, but also they just have amazing scenery. So Bernie was just giving props to the cross-country riders in front of us because, yeah, we're definitely not slow here. And it's amazing how they are actually really having fun, going fast, having a blast on their cross-country bikes, and they don't have a lot of travel, so it's so great to see. That's generally something that I love here. Spanish guys, man, they enjoy their trails. So again, I'm trying to overtake not managing, but well, I just went with the flow.
Panorama genießen hier.
So the next section coming up is again very, very steep, super steppy, super loose, very gnarly. You probably won't be able to tell. I asked the rider if I could pass the rider in front of me, but he wouldn't let me, and I didn't want to stress him out here because it is a very technical section, and there's some lines that are just even techier and that could cause a crash. So I didn't want to stress him, especially then. Bernie was also telling me, hey, the rider's not on an e-bike, don't stress him out, and he's totally right. I was getting into race mode and I totally forgot about that some riders are not on e-bikes, so I truly apologize. But that's a danger of racing, because you get into this tunnel and you start really wanting to give everything and get into a competitive mode, and then, well, you kind of forget that of course other people are maybe even more challenged, and that I went into this, well, race mode and really started to forget that other riders are not on e-bikes, so I truly apologize. So then this next section here is a very, very, very steep and loose climb. So this is where I was able to overtake the cross-country rider, although big props for coming this far, because this section is so steep and so technical. And even with the e-bike, it's very challenging. So you can see me really fighting to get up here. So it's also something that I do recommend practicing if you want to do well in races, no matter whether you're on an e-bike or not. You really need to practice technical climbing and standing up while climbing. The section also here is a very gnarly, steppy uphill. So if you're sitting down all the time, then you're not going to be able to get up these climbs. You really need to stand up on the climbs and move your body around to absorb those impacts and to maintain traction on both your wheels. Because a lot of people keep saying, oh, you need to stay seated as long as possible. It is true if it's not very technical and not very steep, because it's of course more efficient if the saddle is carrying your weight. But if it's technical, it's not going to be possible, and if it's very steep, not either. So here Bernie met a friend of ours who has a bike shop here, and he was telling him that today is one of those days where he's just not getting into the heat mode. He's more like kind of loading and not getting really warm. I was right behind him on the next trail, which is called Elian's Trail, and it was so nice following him. He's a very experienced cross-country racer himself, and it was so amazing to follow his lines because he really knows these trails, and it was so much fun following them, seeing his lines, seeing his precision with these lines, and just being able to follow them and have more fun. What you can also see here, although it is steeper than it looks, that you can see that both him and I are, when we're riding with level pedals, we're extending the legs to really save energy and recover. And then we only bend the legs like here when it gets very steep and very technical, and any little section in between where you can extend your legs, that is golden. It's so important because you can recover energy again. This section here is very, very narrow, and there's big steps, big roll downs, and it's loose. So what you really need here is precision in your brake control, really good body position, the ability to ride down roll downs in succession without losing your balance through the feet, and of course vision control, which are all fundamentals that you need to practice off trails to automatize them so that you can then transfer them to the trails and you don't need to think about them anymore. And it's also interesting, maybe you noticed that we had a few corners, also tighter corners and high-speed corners, and you can see both the guy in front of me and myself keeping my pedals mostly level and evenly weighted, so not dropping a pedal, because that's something that I, of course, sometimes do, and it does have its uses, but most of the times I keep my pedals level and evenly weighted because it enables me to ensure better pressure control, to have a bigger base of support, and to really ensure traction on my front wheel through using my feet and hips, positioning them better. Here on this trail, you can see me following Jaume, who really knows this trail, and it's amazing, the lines he's hitting, and it was so much fun following. This is a super steep section here, and then we have a tiny little jump coming here, which is great fun. And then the trail flows down until we cross the street. And it's so amazing. If you're hitting the right lines, you actually just have so much more flow. And that's great if you, of course, if you know a trail, then you're just able to ride it with much more finesse and concentrate on the skills much better, because you don't need to concentrate on where to ride. After the fun trail, we had another techie climb, and God, I was grateful for my e-bike on these techie climbs because it was super steep, super steppy, also loose. So Bernie keeps telling me, hey, keep your distance to the riders in front of you, they're not on e-bikes, because again, sometimes I forget that. The total time we took for the race was about 1.5 hours. It had about 30 kilometers, and well, pushing the e-bike is never fun, but it's also part of the game if you're stalled behind another rider. That's why well, yeah, of course, it's also important to be able to dismount and remount your bike. So that's also something that I recommend practicing before you start racing and automatizing, because you need to be able to perform dismounts and restarts on climbs and on descents just all the time, because you're going to be stalled behind riders, or well, you never know, someone may crash. At the end of the race, we actually noticed, well, someone told us that they didn't check the e-bikes at the beginning of the race, so that a lot of people had non-limited tuned e-bikes, so they were not limited to 25 kilometers per hour. And that explained why we were struggling sometimes, and a lot of people just overtook us on, well, e-bikes without seeming very, very tired. This next trail coming here is a very technical, loose, steppy one again. This was actually part of a UCI cross-country race, so the world's best riders came here to my hometown to ride, and this was one of the descents they had. And probably you won't tell on, you can't really tell on the video, but it's very steep, very steppy, and you really need to modulate your brakes to not get too quick and quote-unquote stay loose to allow the bike to move. So in this section, I actually found out that I'm either first or second, so that's when I really started to become even more competitive. The climbs right here are super off camber, very technical and very steep. So big props to all the riders who are not on e-bikes, like the guy in front of me. Man, I gave him props so many times because he was doing so well. And he's not on an e-bike, so wow. So I was just giving this guy props because he really amazed me. I mean, he was probably 60 or 65 and he was doing amazing. So Bernie thought he had a loose rear tire there, so he stopped. And he told me, you continue because, I mean, you just found out that you're either first or second, so you better ride. Probably the most demanding part of this race was how steep the climbs became near the end. So even with an e-bike, we were really fighting to make these climbs. And I got stuck here because, yeah, shame on me. I really stuck my toe into my spokes. Don't ask me how I did that, but so I also needed to walk some parts, which is super challenging with the e-bike, but well, you know, I guess it belongs to mass start races. And again, here is what I was saying before, you really need to be able to restart your bike even in very steep and loose terrain, and you need to be able to ride uphill, very technical stuff. You see, it's so steep that I actually ruined my camera. Can you see the little spot on the camera? Well, that's because I clipped the camera lens against my stem when I was riding something very steep uphill. So you can imagine how much I must need to move my body forward in order to keep traction on my front wheel. And that's also what I was saying before, that there's no way you can ride these climbs in a seated way. So you really need to stand up, move your body around to maintain traction on your front wheel. And you can actually see this in the rider in front of me, how he's standing up, getting low, moving forward when it gets steep, because he really needs to maintain traction and control over that front wheel. Besides the super techy climbs, you also had very steep, loose descents in the end that really required you to stay focused and stay finely tuned on your brakes to maintain a loss of control. So this is super steep here, and that's why I just overtook the rider, because you probably didn't know the section. I was like, whoa, which I didn't know it either. But luckily I can really trust my skills on steep and loose section, especially my braking skills, my body positioning, and my line choice, because that's what's really important in these sections. Then there were some even steeper climbs coming up here near the end that, wow, I still cannot repeat often enough how much props I need to give the riders who did this race on non-e-bikes, because they must be so fit. Near the end of the race, there were even steeper climbs that even some of the e-bikers walked, but with the right skills, you could ride them. So that's when we again overtook some more riders and we managed to get to the front. Actually, fun fact, we were on spot 19 and 20 out of 71 e-bikers, and I think on like place 40 or something from out of all 500 riders. And that was because we were able to overtake so many riders, of course, thanks to our e-bikes, but also thanks to our skills. So skills really pay off. Like here you can see that even the e-bikers are struggling or not riding these tight switchbacks, and with the right skills you can. Here we are approaching the end of the race. Bernie, my hero, always waiting for me, giving me water, being there for me, showing me some great lines, and of course filming me. And in this part he actually took me by the hand and pulled me into the last section because I was getting pretty tired. But when we then found out that a lot of the riders had tuned e-bikes, well, wow, we were pretty proud of what we achieved actually, with the top 20 out of 71 e-bikers and top 40 out of all the, I think it was 500 in total riders. We were very pleased with how well we did. So that's just something that I wanted to share with you, that skills really do pay off, and especially working for technical trails off the trails in an easy terrain is what counts. So repeating and repeating those skills until they're automatized, to then be able to apply them even to race situations or to unknown trails. That's what you can also reach if you really practice in a methodical, step-by-step manner in a safe learning zone. And right before we got into the finish line, we overtook one more rider right here. Sorry, dude, I don't think he enjoyed it. But well, you know, once you start that competitive nature, then I'm guessing it just kind of had to be.
So you want to know which place we made? We're in spot 19 and 20 out of 71 e-bike participants. I'm marked red here because I'm the first in the female category. There was another lady that came in about half an hour after me, and there were a total of another 9 ladies in the non-e-bike category. So we definitely need more women on bikes. Overall, there were over 400 something riders, so we overtook about 350 riders in total. So now here's an extra info. You know, I said at the beginning of the video, we felt like our e-bikes were broken. Well, we found out afterwards that some of the e-bikers here had unlimited e-bikes. Our e-bikes stop assisting at about 25 kilometers per hour. Well, some of these e-bikers didn't have that stop to their assistance. And that's why we are super, super proud of our placement here at 19 and 20 out of 71, overtaking over 350 riders. Woo-woo. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this super exciting race that has been taking place for over 20 years here in my new hometown, La Nucía. I hope you enjoyed this video. Share in the comments how you liked it, and if you'd like me to post similar content in future. Have a lovely day, evening or morning, whatever you're up to next. Thanks for staying here till the end. Goodbye.